What we want to do now is just to get into a little bit more depth, some additional questions that we will ask each of the panelists, and just basically have a conversation about the topics at hand here. I want to start with Stu Litcher. Stu, when you were talking, you mentioned perception playing such a large role in the way we approach things. And putting that aside and dealing just with reality here, how would you compare the business environment of the greater Cleveland area with that of other areas of the company? Who's doing it better, and what exactly are they doing that makes them better?
Well, basically, we deal on a nationwide basis, and we get to see a pretty unique perception, about how different places deal. And you really have two areas. Different areas are dealt a different hand. Some areas are dealt a better hand than others. Within areas, some towns are dealt a better hand than others. So, from my perspective, as someone who has probably brought more business into empty buildings than anybody in the country, if you go into a town that's 20 miles from an interstate, right, it's dealt a hand that's very hard to fight against. California is dealt great weather. Ohio isn't dealt great weather. And when you deal with individual businesses, factors like that, different factors mean different things, to some owners. Some owners it's all about money. Some owners it's about lifestyle. But when you get to Northeast Ohio, right, in my dealings, we are among the best places in the country in the number of groups that are promoting the area, the reception we get when we walk into a door, of different government offices, and how much the government is willing to help to make a deal happen. I tell this story about a major development we're trying to do in California, and we have nobody opposed to the deal. It's $1 billion development. It's going to create 6,000 jobs. It's going to change the whole town. And we're about $3 million in 2 years into our entitlements. There's 16 agencies to go through. And this is not a project that nobody's against. It'll be 4 years to get an entitlement. Our Goodyear development in Akron, Ohio, when it looked like the deal was going to happen, we go to the mayor and say, the land isn't zoned, right? We've got to make all these changes. What's the process? There must be a pretty extended time. We should start talking about what agencies we have to go through and what we have to do. And the mayor turns to the economic development director, and it was, Bob, you already did all that, didn't we? So from the perspective of a developer or a company coming into town, the can-do attitude here is fairly, I don't want to say unique, because I think down south there's a lot of communities, but when you get out west, right, it's really, what can we do to make sure you're doing what we need as a community, and that you're fitting into what our preconceived notion is. And here, there's a real attitude, what can we do to help you? What can we do to make life really good for you? So I would have to say that in this region, you guys are doing a whole lot more right than wrong. You're doing a whole lot more right than a lot of other places in the country. And part of that is because you have to, because you've had a lot of plant closings. And you need the jobs, and but there's a lot right here.
Well, that's good and encouraging to hear, and not to dwell on the negative, but what aren't we doing?
Well, I think it's community by community. It's very hard to make generalizations, but there are certain communities that even here, where you go in, I mean, the city of Cleveland, example, has a reputation of being a more difficult place to deal with than a lot of other places. And I think it's because politically there's a perception it doesn't have its act together, right? A lot of different vested interests. Maybe a government that's not quite as strong. Again, I don't think that's related to the individual people. It's just related to the way that government functions. But when you get into the outlying smaller communities, you tend not to have those issues. I'm not sure how that's fixable. But to business people, that stuff matters, right? It matters, how am I going to be dealt with when I'm talking about moving a business there, right? How easy is it to get to somebody who can make a decision, right? Can a decision be made quickly? So I'm not sure I know all the answers, because I'm not really a political person, but certainly the city of Cleveland's growth has been inhibited by a perception in the business community it's hard to do business with in a lot of the places around it. And, you know, and I don't mean to pick on the city, but so it's really hard to answer your question in general because it's really community by community how they deal. There's always infrastructure things that can be done. There's school things that can be done. If there's a, you know, where companies look to have an educated workforce, I think on the upper level of the universities, I think that's a big plus for economic development. I think on the manufacturing level, on the more basic levels, there's some issues in this area about, you know, this area is known for having a great, stable workforce. It's mostly the older part of the workforce. So I think it's a place where the strength is getting weaker, and will get weaker as the time goes on, unless there's some improvements in the basic education level as opposed to the upper education level. I think that the tech industries and everything, the university is excellent. It's a real plus and attractive business.
Fred, could you approach that same question from a more internal perspective, since you are a Clevelander, a Greater Clevelander, how do you think we can make Greater Cleveland more conducive to the type of development that we're seeking?
I think there are a couple of things. I think, obviously, given this answer, you may think the question was a little loaded, but regional cooperative economic development, I think and I can go on and on about all the positives. Just one quick vignette is the fact that my law firm has 30 offices around the world. We have to move people in and out of different cities all the time. And you know what? It's hard to get people to come to Cleveland, but once they've come here and lived, we can't get them to leave. They don't want to move away because there is so much attractive here about the quality of life and the opportunities. But fundamental issues that we are facing, in Cuyahoga County there are 57 municipalities. Now we don't quite have 57 police and fire forces and 57 school districts, but not far from that. It makes no sense. And now I understand the realities of the difficulty of changing that, but some type of cooperative undertaking, as the mayor has described, that capitalizes on our strengths, gets us to eliminate duplication, will help and has an economic development system where we aren't competing against each other, where we share in each other's success, is critical for us to move forward collectively. The second thing is, and Stu hit on it, education. Education, education, education. In the new economy, in the age of technology, it is the passport out of poverty, out of the working class, into the mainstream. And our education system is okay, it's not great. And I think that's true at all levels. We don't have a system in place that is producing enough graduates who are qualified for the jobs that are going to be available in tomorrow's economy.